The sound of handcuffs echoed through the quiet neighborhood. A child's scream cut through the still evening air. Just moments before, everything had felt normal, peaceful even. A family had been unpacking groceries in front of a soft blue. Rental home, kids laughing, parents smiling, all looking forward to a week of rest. But then everything changed. In a matter of seconds, what started as a family vacation turned into a nightmare one that would leave scars deeper than anyone expected. Because sometimes the badge you carry doesn't protect you from the way the world chooses to see you. Had taken nearly a year to plan this trip. Between his work at the bureau and her packed dental schedule, finding a full week off was nearly impossible, but they made it happen. Just 7 days with no phones, no emergencies, and no late-night calls. Just sand, sunsets, and a little peace. They pulled up to the beach house just before sunset. It sat quietly on a corner lot, tucked between palm trees and perfectly cut lawns. A wide porch wrapped around the front with a wooden swing that creaked gently in the breeze. It looked like something from a postcard. Like nothing bad could ever happen there. Their 2 kids exploded out of the SUV like bottled up fireworks. 6 hours on the road had left them full of energy. They ran to the front door, calling dibs on rooms before the bags were even out of the trunk. He smiled, stretching his back, breathing in the salt air. For the first time in a long time, his shoulders relaxed. His wife stepped out beside him, barefoot and smiling, her dress swaying with the wind. She looked lighter than she had in months. "They're not listening," she said, laughing softly as the kids ran circles around the porch. "I'm just glad we made it," he replied, lifting the cooler from the trunk. "Let's just breathe for a while." Inside, the house was cozy and clean. Light wood floors, tall windows, and the scent of lemon from the cleaning crew. They unloaded groceries, unpacked bags, and settled in like they'd lived there for years. She lit a citronella candle and placed it on the porch table. He poured a cold beer and sat down to enjoy the breeze. That's when he noticed it, the first patrol car. It wasn't speeding. It wasn't rushing to a call. It was crawling. Slow, deliberate. He watched it through the porch railing as it moved past the house. The officer inside turned his head, looking directly at them. He tried to brush it off. Cops patrol neighborhoods. All the time, he muttered to himself. But something didn't sit right. Minutes later, a second patrol car appeared. Different driver, same slow pace. Same long stare. He leaned forward in his chair. The beer, still cold in his hand, suddenly felt bitter in his mouth. "That's 2 in 10 minutes, he said quietly. His wife stepped onto the porch, drying her hands on a dish towel. "What's going on?" He stood up slowly. "I'm going to check the mailbox," he said. "Let them see me." Calm. "Normal. Are you sure?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "I've done this before." And he had too many times. The quiet dance of staying safe when your skin color makes people nervous. Move slow. Keep hands visible. Don't reach for anything. Smile, even if you're not okay. Do it all right, and maybe you'll get through it. He walked down the driveway, nodding politely at the officer in the parked car. No response. No nod back. Just a cold, hard stare. Like he was a problem, not a person. By the time he returned to the porch, the kids were outside too. The youngest leaned against the doorframe, her eyes wide. "Dad, that cop's still there," his son whispered. And then a third patrol car pulled up. No sirens, just lights. Red and blue washing over the quiet street. Then a fourth car followed. They blocked the road, their engines still running. No one stepped out. No one said anything, until they did. A voice boomed out from a loudspeaker. "Step off the porch, hands where I can see them." Everything stopped. The kids froze. The wife gasped. And the man, the one who carried a badge for 17 years, raised his hands into the air as his world shifted beneath his feet. They weren't here to ask questions. They were here because someone had already decided what kind of people they were. And it was only the beginning. Step off the porch, hands where I can see them. The words hung in the air like a sharp blade. No shouting, no chaos. Just a command that cut through everything. He didn't move right away, not out of disobedience, but because in that split second, his instincts were split in two. One side of him, the trained agent, understood how quickly things could go wrong. The other side, the father looked at his kids, frozen on the porch behind him, eyes wide and terrified. He saw his wife step in front of the children, one arm stretched out protectively. He took a slow breath and stepped down. Both hands were raised. His steps were measured like every move was happening underwater. He walked down the short steps of the porch and stood in the middle of the yard, his palms open, visible. "I'm Special Agent," he began. "Quiet," the officer barked. The moment was already out of his control. Another officer stepped out of the second cruiser. Then a third. All of them had their hands near their weapons. No one was rushing, but the tension in their body language said everything. They were treating this like a threat, like he was dangerous. His wife called out from the porch, her voice shaking but firm. "This is our rental. We just got here an hour ago. We have the papers inside." She held up her phone, but the officers didn't even look at it. "Ma'am, step down from the porch," another officer said. "Now." "Why?" she asked, her tone sharp now. "We haven't done anything, ma'am." Their son moved closer to his sister, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Neither of them spoke. The girl's lower lip trembled. The boy looked confused, angry, scared, too many emotions for a kid who just wanted to see the beach. The father tried again, louder this time. "I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in the glove box of that vehicle." No reaction. "That's..." When one of the officers rushed forward. A rough hand grabbed his wrist. He didn't resist. He didn't flinch. But the grip twisted hard. The next moment, he was slammed against the porch railing. The wood creaked. His breath caught in his throat. Handcuffs clicked tight around his wrists. Too tight. His knees hit the grass. From the porch, his wife screamed. "He's telling the truth. Our names are on the leaves. The papers are inside." An officer moved toward her. She backed up, holding her arms out to protect the children, but another cop stepped behind her and grabbed her arm. "Don't touch me, I'm not resisting." They pushed her down. Her cheeks scraped the wooden porch. Her dress bunched beneath her knees. She kept yelling, but the words were blending into one another. Panic and disbelief wrapped around her. Like a storm. The kids couldn't take their eyes off it. And neither could the neighbors. Behind the closed curtains and half-open windows, faces watched. People who had seen the family arrive. People who saw nothing wrong until the sirens showed up, and now they said nothing. Not one stepped out. Not one said, "I saw them arrive." They were unpacking groceries. No one asked if maybe this had gone too far. The boy whispered, "Mom?" But no one let him get close. "Stay back." An officer warned him. "Go inside." He didn't move. He just held his little sister tighter. On the ground, the agent looked up slowly. His knees were dug into the grass. His hands were twisted behind his back. A young officer stood above him, face tight, breathing hard. "You're making a mistake," he said, the calm breaking slightly in his voice. "I am not who you think I am." The officer didn't reply. Another officer moved toward the SUV, but instead of checking the glove compartment, he simply looked inside and turned away. "No plate," one of them muttered. "Rental, out of state," matched the description. The father lifted his head. Description of what? The answer came sharp and flat. Suspicious individuals. He closed his eyes for a second. The words hit harder than the cuffs. He'd read that phrase in reports. Suspicious individuals. Code for something unspoken. For people who didn't look like they belonged. Not armed, not dangerous. Just not from here. He looked at his children again. His son's chin was trembling, but he hadn't cried. Not yet. His daughter buried her face in her brother's side. His wife kept trying to talk, begging someone to check the lease. The papers were right there on the kitchen counter. Everything was in her name. She was still in her work dress from that morning. None of this made sense. And yet, it was happening. The agent tried again, louder now. My name is Special Agent. You're being detained. One officer snapped, remained silent. He felt quiet not out of agreement, but out of calculation. His hands were tied. His wife was in cuffs. His kids were watching. One wrong word could make things worse, so he waited. But his heart wasn't silent. Inside, something cracked. Not out of fear, but because everything he'd worked for, everything. He taught his kids about fairness, about law, about protection, was being torn apart right in front of them. And the worst part, he couldn't stop it. Not yet. The grass felt sharp against his knees. The pressure on his wrists was unbearable. The handcuffs bit into his skin, but he didn't flinch. He couldn't not in front of his kids. Not while his wife was still pressed against the porch, her voice shaking but steady, calling out over and over again. This is our house for the week. Look in the kitchen, the paperwork is right there. No one listened. The street, just minutes ago so peaceful, had turned into something else, something colder. The flashing lights painted the windows of nearby homes red and blue, yet not a single neighbor stepped out. Not a single voice said, I saw them unloading groceries. The silence spoke louder than the sirens ever could. The kids hadn't moved. The boy stood in the doorway of the rental home, one arm tied around his little sister's shoulders. His face was pale. His hands were shaking, but he didn't cry. The girl didn't speak. She just kept her head down, clutching his shirt. Their father tried to speak again, not as an agent, just as a dad. Please let them sit down. They're scared. Let the boy check on his mother. The officer nearest to the porch didn't even look back. Just stood stiff, one hand near his belt like a soldier guarding a war zone. But this wasn't a war, it was a rented beach house. It was supposed to be a vacation. A fourth officer had joined the others now. He looked younger, maybe fresh out of the academy. His eyes darted from the kids to the parents, then back again. You could see it on his face, doubt, but he didn't speak. He didn't move. And silence in that moment was the same as agreement. Can I check on my mom? The boy asked softly. He was only 12, but his voice carried more strength than it should have needed. Get inside. One officer barked, not even facing him. The boy didn't move. He looked at his father, waiting for permission. The man nodded slowly. You stay with your sister, he said, steady but low. You're in charge right now. That sentence was heavy. It shouldn't have been spoken at all, not by a man. Kneeling in handcuffs. But in that moment, it became necessary. Because no one else was protecting those kids. His wife groaned as an officer shifted her position. Her cheek pressed against the porch boards. Her hands were still behind her back. Even though she wasn't resisting, she wasn't yelling. She just kept repeating the same thing. Our names are on the lease. Our ID is in my purse. It's inside. A voice finally responded. You got ID? The officer asked coldly. It's in my purse. Inside the house. So is everything else you need. Another officer snapped back. Don't raise your voice. She turned her head slightly, eyes burning. You shoved me in front of my kids. You handcuffed my husband in our yard, and now you want to tell me how loud I can talk. There was a pause. For a second, it felt like someone might listen. But then it all froze again. An older officer stepped forward. His face was blank. He looked like someone who'd done this 100 times. Like nothing surprised him anymore. We got a call, he said flatly. Neighbor reported a possible break-in. Out-of-state vehicle. No visible license plate. You matched the description. The agent looked up. Description of what? Suspicious individuals. There it was again. Those two words he closed. His eyes for a moment. He knew that phrase. Had seen it in dozens of files, reports, body cam reviews. Suspicious individuals was never about what someone did. It was about how they looked, where they were, who they weren't expected to. B. He looked at his SUV. The glove compartment still closed. The black leather badge holder still untouched. You didn't even check the car. He said quietly, no answer. If you're really FBI, the officer continued, we'll sort it out at the station. His wife's voice cracked. At the station? You're dragging us off with no proof, no questions, and our kids are just, what? Left here alone? That's policy, one muttered. Policy, her husband repeated bitterly. You skipped every step in the book. And now you want to call this policy. Two officers stepped forward and lifted him from the grass. He didn't fight it. He couldn't, but as he was led toward the cruiser, he turned his head back to the porch. His kids were still there. Stay with your sister, he said again. His voice didn't rise. It didn't crack. But it carried. The boy nodded once. The girl didn't move. One of the officers glanced at the SUV. What's that? The younger cop asked, pointing at the dash. Papers, maybe. The other shrugged. We'll figure it out later. Later, after the cuffs, after the fear. After the damage had already been done, they pushed him into the back seat of the cruiser. The door slammed shut behind him. It echoed like a final decision. And as the car pulled away, he leaned his head against the window. His kids grew smaller in the side mirror, still standing, still watching. Not crying. Just waiting. And he knew the look on their faces would stay with him longer than anything else. Because this wasn't just about what was happening now. It was about what they'd never be. Able to unsee, the police cruiser felt like a cage. Cold metal, no space to stretch. Hands still cuffed behind his back. He leaned his head against the window and stared at the passing houses. Every porch, every front yard, every quiet face watching from behind blinds, it all blurred into one long line of silence. No one had stepped in. No one had said a word. He wasn't angry yet. Not the kind of anger that explodes. This was a deeper kind. The slow-burning kind that started in the chest and worked its way to the bones. He had spent nearly 2 decades serving his country, building cases, following leads, helping people. But none of that mattered tonight, not in this town. Not on the street. His kids were still standing on that porch, watching, waiting, probably, thinking he'd done something wrong. Probably wondering if they would ever feel safe again. At the station, they let him inside without a word. No one made eye contact. No one asked him for ID. The cuffs stayed on. The door to the holding area clanked shut behind him. The room smelled like old coffee and bleach, and the buzzing lights overhead made everything feel colder. He sat down on a metal bench, his shoulders tight with a mix of exhaustion and disbelief. His wrists ached from the pressure of the cuffs, but no one offered to loosen them. Somewhere nearby, he could hear his wife's voice, sometimes sharp, sometimes breaking. She was fighting not for herself, but for the truth, for their children, for their dignity. Minutes passed, then more. Time didn't feel real in there. Finally, a young officer walked by. Couldn't have been more than 25. Hair buzzed short, wide eyes like he wasn't sure what he was doing. The kid stopped in the doorway. You the FBI guy? He asked like it was a joke. The agent looked up, calmly. Double quotes, yes. I've told your team that more than once. My credentials are in the glove box. Left side, black leather case, federal seal inside. The kid's face shifted. A flicker of discomfort crossed his features. He nodded and quickly stepped away. More waiting. The air inside the room felt heavy, thick with everything unsaid. Finally, footsteps approached. Not the slow kind. These were fast, urgent. A man appeared in the doorway. Mid-50s, civilian clothes. Probably a sergeant. The kind of authority that didn't need to shout. You say your badge is in the car? The man asked. The agent nodded. Yes. In the glove box. Same place I told your officers. Same place it's been for the last hour. No apology, no reaction. The sergeant just turned and walked off. 10 more minutes crawled by. Then came the sound of shoes moving quickly. The young officer returned. This time, he looked nervous. Really nervous. He stepped inside and cleared his throat. You, Agent Deschamps, sir. Yeah, confirmed your identification. I just wanted to say this was a miscommunication. The agent raised his head. Don't call it that. The room went still. Don't call it a miscommunication. That word doesn't cover what my kids just saw. What your officers just did. That was a choice, not a mix-up. The officer nodded, eyes low. I'll get those cuffs off now. A few moments later, he sat at a small table, finally free from the cuffs, rubbing the pain out of his wrists. His wife entered. Her arms crossed, her jaw tight, her expression hard. They're saying it was just a mix-up, she said. His eyes didn't leave hers. Their job, right? She sat down beside him. That's what they said. That they were just doing their job, that the neighbor made the call. Funny, he said, voice low. I didn't see anyone asking questions before we were on the ground. Another man entered the room. Clean cut, button-up shirt, no name tag. Probably someone from higher up. He sat across from them like he was trying to make a meeting feel casual. We've confirmed your identity, he said, voice flat. Good, the agent said. That only took 2 hours, 4 patrol cars, and scaring our kids half to death. You have to understand, the man started. No, he cut in. I don't have to understand why 4 officers approached without asking a single question. I don't have to understand why no one checked the papers sitting on the kitchen counter, or why a badge in a glove box meant nothing until after the damage was done. The man shifted, uncomfortable. We're willing to drop any charges, waive the tow fees. There were no charges, his wife snapped. Because we didn't commit a crime. The agent leaned forward, calm, precise, but every word felt like a punch of truth. Here's what's going to happen, he said. I want a full report of everything that happened tonight. Every officer's name, their badge numbers. I want the body cam footage, and I want the 911 transcript. The man hesitated. We're reviewing. No, you're going to hand it over. Because I'm calling my supervisor in DC as soon as I walk out of this room. And you're going to explain to your officers just how close they came to ruining their careers. He stood up. One more thing, he added, voice sharper now. My kids are still sitting on a porch in a town that just treated their family like criminals. And you don't just walk away from that. He didn't wait for a reply, didn't need one. He'd already made his next move. Because this wasn't just about a false arrest anymore. It was about everything that happened after. The SUV pulled slowly into the driveway. The tires crunched against the gravel. The street was still. Too still. The porch lights of nearby houses glowed faintly, like they were pretending nothing had happened. Curtains were drawn tight. Not one neighbor came outside. No one waved. Number 1 apologized. But they had seen it every second of it. On the porch, his son stood holding his sister, just like they had been when the police took their parents away. He hadn't moved. His back was straight, but his hands were tight around his sister's arms. She looked smaller now, like the world had taken something from her in just one night. The car door opened, and he stepped out. No smile, no forced cheer. He bent down and pulled his son into his arms, holding the back of his head gently. I'm all right, he said softly. You did good. You looked after her. I'm proud of you. His wife stepped out next. Her hair was messy, her dress wrinkled. But her presence felt like strength. She crouched to scoop up their daughter, pressing her face into the girl's hair. I'm so sorry, baby, she whispered. I'm so sorry. The little girl nodded. It got really quiet after you left, she said. Her voice was small. One neighbor came out, just stood across the street. Didn't say anything. He looked across the road. A porch light still glowed. A shadow moved behind the window, watching, pretending now like he hadn't picked up the phone an hour ago and started the whole thing. They went inside. Nothing had changed. The grocery bags were still on the kitchen counter. A towel still hung over the back of a dining chair. The cartoon the kids had been watching was frozen on the TV for a second. It all felt like a bad dream. But at WSN single quotes T. He picked up the rental paperwork from the counter, his wife's name, confirmation number, check-in date. Everything they tried to tell the officers, right there in black and white. He squeezed the paper in one hand, then pulled out his phone with the other. "I'm calling DC," he said. "Now." He stepped out onto the porch and dialed the number from memory. It rang once. "Yeah, it's Deshawn," he said. "I need a direct patch to operations, South Carolina. Small town called Edisto. Civilian complaint incoming. Multiple officers involved. Body cam footage needs to be flagged before it disappears." A pause. "No, this isn't work-related," he said. His voice dropped harder now. "It's personal. They came after my family." Inside, his wife poured their daughter a glass of water and sat her on the couch. "You okay, baby?" she asked gently. The girl nodded. "Why did they do that?" "We didn't do anything." Her mother took her hand. "Because they were wrong, that's all? They were wrong. And it's not your fault. Don't ever think it is." He came back inside. And then later, rubbing his forehead. "They've already started pulling footage. I want the 911 audio too. I need to hear what that neighbor said. Exactly how they said it." "Think it was that guy across the street?" she asked. He looked through the front window, back toward the lighted porch. "Could be," he said. "Could be someone else." But either way, they didn't have to believe it so quickly. They chose to. His son stood nearby, arms crossed tightly. "What if you weren't with us?" The boy asked suddenly. What if it was just me and Mom? The words stung more than anything else that night. He took a slow breath. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I know this, we're not staying quiet about it." Later, while she got the kids ready for bed, he sat alone at the dining table with his laptop open. He didn't scroll, he didn't browse. He typed out every detail, every word that had been said. Every time they ignored his voice. Every moment they treated his family like suspects. Not as an agent, not as someone writing another report, but as a father. As a man who had watched his kids tremble on a porch while four armed strangers decided what kind of people they were. He didn't stop for an hour. Not until the full picture was there. Clear. Uncheckable. Then came a knock at the door. Slow. Hesitant. He stood. "Check the PEPH. OALE. It was the young officer. The same one who had looked confused earlier. The one who hadn't said much. Now he stood. Alone on the porch, holding a black leather badge holder in one hand, he opened the door halfway. The officer shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to bring this back in person. Didn't feel right sending it back through the department." The agent didn't reach for it. "I saw the footage," the officer continued, eyes low. "I saw how he looked. I wanted to say I'm sorry." A long silence passed between them. "That's a start," the agent said quietly. He took the badge, closed the door, and locked it back in the living room. His wife looked up. "Someone from the station?" "Yeah," he replied, sitting beside her. "He brought the badge back. Anything else?" He stared at the leather holder for a second, then set it down. "Yeah," he said finally. He finally saw what we saw. But after everything that happened, he knew something else too. Seeing it isn't enough. Not if nothing changes after. The next morning started early. His phone rang before sunrise. He stepped outside in socks and a t-shirt, rubbing his eyes as he answered the call. Fog rolled low across the lawn, rising like smoke from the quiet pavement. It was his supervisor in DC, Director Vale. Her voice was firm, but it wasn't businesslike. This wasn't one of those regular check-ins. She had read the report he sent the night before. Every word. "I'm not calling you as a boss," she said. "I'm calling as someone who knows this storm is coming. The footage is already online." He paused. How long ago? Maybe 30 minutes. Ring camera across the street. Local news picked it up first. It's bouncing across social media now. He didn't say anything for a moment. "I figured it would happen," he said finally. "You're about to get calls," she said. "A lot of them." And she was right, Dot. By the time he stepped back inside the house, his inbox had already started. Filling up, civil rights attorneys. Reporters. Former colleagues. Even an old professor from Quantico. Every message said the same thing. "We saw what happened. We're behind you. What do you want us to do?" His wife was standing in the kitchen wearing leggings and a hoodie, hair pulled back into a messy bun. She scrolled through her phone, her thumb frozen above the screen. "You see the clip yet?" she asked without looking up. "I haven't watched it," he said. She held up her phone. "It's already past 100,000 views." Local station in Charleston picked it up. "Some people in the comments are trying to figure out who you are. They'll know soon enough," he said quietly. By 10 a.m., the local police department put out a statement. A short one, cold, generic. It read more like a form letter than a response to what had happened. "We are aware of an incident involving officers responding to a citizen call about suspicious activity. We are conducting an internal review." That was it. No names, no apology, no accountability. Just words designed to fill space. "They're trying to control the damage," she said. He opened his laptop again. "They're not going to be able to." He drafted a letter to the department's internal affairs office, 3 full pages. Bullet points, timestamps, a list of every action taken and every opportunity missed. He didn't just send it to the local department. He copied the FBI's Office of Professional Responsibility. Just in case. Around noon, someone knocked at the door again. This time, it was the man from across the street. Tall, stiff, pale skin, shirt tucked in neatly. He had the look of someone who always parked straight in the driveway. The kind of man who likely chaired the homeowners association and sent emails about trash bins. Left out too long. He stood there with both hands in his pockets, his posture stiff. "I wanted to come over," he said. Neither the agent nor his wife invited him inside. "I saw everything last night. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." "I guess." His wife folded her arms. "Was it you who called the cops?" He looked down at the steps. "I wasn't sure what was going on. We don't get a lot of rentals here. It's usually a quiet neighborhood." The agent stepped forward, calm but firm. "Let me get this straight," he said. "You saw a black family pulling groceries into a house. No shouting. No broken windows. No threats. And your instinct was to call in a felony." "I didn't mean for it to go like that," the man muttered. "But it did." The agent replied. "And the next time it happens, and it will, you better think real hard about what exactly you're afraid of. Because it sure wasn't us." The man didn't reply. He gave a short, embarrassed nod and walked back across the street. His wife closed the door behind him. "Coward," she said under her breath. He exhaled. Let him live with it. That night, a local journalist called. Then another. By the end of the evening, a national outlet had picked up the story. His name was in the headline now. FBI agent wrongfully detained while vacationing with family. Caught on camera. He sat at the kitchen table, the kids playing nearby with board games and colored markers. His phone buzzed again and again. "You gonna talk to them?" his wife asked. He looked at the screen, then at the living room. "I think I have to. You're not just doing this for us anymore, are you?" He met her eyes. "No, I'm doing it because the next family might not have a badge in the glove box." She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. The look in her eyes said she understood. 2 days later, he was back in Washington. A press conference was scheduled. Civil rights attorneys flanked him on one side, a spokesperson from the FBI on the other. The table in front of him was long and made of oak. Reporters filed in, shuffling papers, adjusting microphones. Cameras clicked. Lights buzzed. He had been in that room before, but never like this. He took a deep breath, leaned into the microphone, and began to speak. My name is Special Agent Jonathan Dishon. 17 years of federal service. And 3 nights ago, I was thrown to the ground in front of my children because someone thought we didn't belong in the house we rented. His voice was clear, steady, but full of quiet power. And for the first time since that night, the world finally started listening. The room stayed silent after he spoke. No one coughed. No chairs moved. Every camera lens was locked on him. The microphones picked up nothing but his voice and the weight behind each word. The officers who responded didn't ask questions. He continued. They didn't verify names. They didn't look at the lease or check the car for credentials. They didn't listen. They saw us. They heard the word suspicious, and they acted like we were a threat. He paused to let that land. My badge was in the glove box the entire time. My family was telling the truth the entire time. But none of that mattered, not until after the handcuffs. He looked around the room, not searching for sympathy, but clarity. I'm speaking publicly now because it shouldn't take a federal badge to be treated like a human being. Because too many families like mine don't get a second chance to tell the story. And because too many children like my son and daughter are learning too early that their safety can be taken away with a phone call and a wrong assumption. The press conference made headlines across the country that night. But he wasn't interested in attention. He wanted change. 2 days later, the Edisto Police Department held a small press briefing. Their police chief read off a brief, carefully. Written statement like he was announcing school closures. We acknowledge that mistakes were made during the arrest of Agent Dishon and his wife. We are reviewing our response procedures and have placed 2 officers on administrative leave pending a full investigation. No apology, no names, just damage control. His wife watched the footage from their living room and shook her head. That's it? Administrative leave? She said. That's what they call it. They're hoping it dies down, he replied. But it won't, not this time. A local council member called for an independent review. A congresswoman tweeted support. For policy reform, the mayor's office issued a formal statement promising transparency. Though it didn't say much, even the rental property owner sent an email offering the family a free future stay. No, thank you. His wife replied simply, We're not coming back. Meanwhile, he spent his days speaking to civil rights organizations, law students, and local reporters, not for attention but for awareness. He kept his message simple. This isn't about one officer or one bad decision. It's about a system that responds to fear before it checks facts. It's about a structure that gives the benefit of the doubt to some and not to others. He told his story over and over again. Not because it was easy, but because someone needed to hear it. Someone in a uniform. Someone in a classroom. Someone in a neighborhood like that. Then one evening, while reviewing footage his legal team had obtained from body cameras, he paused on a still frame. It showed his wife on the porch. Her hands cuffed behind her. Her face turned in anguish toward their daughter. He stared at that image for a long time. His wife walked in and saw the screen. You okay? She asked. He didn't answer right away. That picture, he said softly. It's going to stay in their minds. The kids, no matter how hard I try, I can't take that away. She sat beside him. No, she said. But they also saw you fight. They saw you stand up. They saw what it means to make it matter. That counts too. And she was right. Their daughter had stopped talking about the arrest as much. She was drawing again pictures of sunny skies and beach houses. Stick, figures holding hands. Their son had asked for help writing a letter. To who? He'd asked. The mayor. The boy replied. He said he wanted to say how wrong it felt to see good people treated like criminals. You sure you're ready to say all that? His father asked. I think I have to, the boy said. The night before school started again, he sat on the back porch with his son. The city lights of DC blurred the stars above, but they sat quietly anyway, father and son, just sharing the same sky. The boy held a glass of apple juice and finally asked the question he'd been holding. Why'd they think we didn't belong there? The agent didn't rush to answer. Sometimes, he said, people are taught to believe that certain people aren't supposed to be in certain places. They believe it so long, they stop asking questions. They just act. But we didn't do anything wrong, the boy said. No, we didn't. So why'd they treat? It's like that. The agent took a long breath, because how the world sees you and how you see yourself, they don't always match. And sometimes people don't care about facts. They care about their fear. And that's why I had to speak up. He looked at his son, because it could have been just you and your mom next time, or someone else with no badge. And maybe if they hear this story, they'll stop and think before they react. The boy nodded quietly. I wrote something, he said, for school. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his hoodie. On top it read, The night I learned grown-ups can be wrong. His father? Read every word, simple, honest, not angry, just real. You wrote the truth, he said. I didn't know if I was allowed to, the boy replied. You always are. The next morning, the kids climbed onto the school bus. His wife waved from the porch, hand wrapped around a warm cup of tea. He stood beside her, watching their son straighten his shoulders as he stepped onto the bus. He carried his essay in his backpack. He wasn't the same kid who left for vacation. None of them were, but maybe that was the point. This story wasn't just about one family. It wasn't just about a badge, or a neighbor, or a uniform. It was about how quickly things can go wrong. When fear wins. It was about what happens when people act without listening, and when power is used without thought. But more than anything, it was about dignity, the kind that shouldn't need to be defended, but sometimes must be. So if you're hearing this now, if any part of this made you stop and feel something, don't let it fade. Ask the hard questions. Speak up when it's easier to stay silent, because the next family might not have a badge to flash or a platform to be heard. They might just have their truth, and someone like you who chooses to listen. Sometimes that's exactly what changes everything.